It is time for our weekly newsroom session with the CEO, Kathryn Arndt, and this has become required viewing across the sector each week. Kathryn, I hope you're not feeling too much pressure.
Look, just a little bit, Chris, with that introduction, but nice to see you again. And it's a good time of week to catch up on what's been happening and what's coming up ahead next week.
Indeed, and as always, there's been quite a bit happening around the sector, but the topic that everyone is keeping an eye on and waiting to get some clarity on is the timing of the elections. We're a little bit closer to knowing, do you think?
Look, I believe we are, Chris. The Minister's acutely aware that the sector's looking for some clarity on that. I caught up with him earlier in the week, and we believe that today will be the day that he'll make that announcement. From the VLGA's perspective, look, there's been a mixed view in the sector about whether or not those elections should be deferred or not. Clearly there's been some sort of engagement with councillors, but of course the consultation as to whether or not the democratic term of 4 years should be extended beyond that has not actually extended out into the community. So I guess it's one of those potentially controversial issues or sensitive issues for some councillors who are keen to see a deferral, but at the same time there are some very real legislative implications if a deferral were to happen. But also I think the Minister has to be guided by the VEC and also the Chief Health Officer in making that decision. The conversation has also taken a slight turn to the fact that women may be disadvantaged in a COVID-19 environment to go into an election. The VLGA, we're all aware that the current system disadvantages women. I think the focus should be on how we can fund the work that needs to happen to actually embed some systemic change so that regardless of times of good or disaster, women aren't disadvantaged by the system that we operate in. So the VLGA will be having those conversations with the state government, but certainly in terms of the election, we just need to know what's happening so we can move forward.
That's the issue, isn't it? I think that there's a couple of schools of thought about this. There's those who want it to be deferred, there's those who don't, and then there's those that aren't actually that fussed, but they want to know for certain. So I don't envy the Minister. There's some complex issues here, and if we had a crystal ball and we knew how long the COVID-19 restrictions were going to be impacting and to what level, it'd be a lot easier.
Absolutely, I agree, yes.
There's quite a bit of news around the sector. We're not proposing to cover all of that, but I do note that the longer-term panel of administrators has been appointed at the City of Casey this week.
That's right, and Nolene Duff will continue as one of those, so alongside a couple of others whose names I'm sorry I just can't recall at the moment, but that's good for Casey and the community there to have those administrators appointed so they can get on with the business of working with the CEO to run the council.
And we would assume a similar announcement coming with regard to Whittlesea before too long.
Yes, look, I imagine so. I don't have a timeline on that, but I would think any day now that would be happening. A couple of other things happening in the sector. There was an ombudsman report into the city of Ballarat, which has some important lessons in terms of process. So it is worth reading if people are interested in that. I must remind our members that the VLGA board elections nominations are now open. There are 2 vacancies for that, and nominations will close on the 29th of May. So it's important to get your nomination in. Eligible candidates include any councillor at a VLGA member council.
Kathryn, this week you've run your first virtual candidate information session. This is not the mandatory candidate training that will be required as part of the Local Government Act in the lead up to the elections, but a workshop to start talking to candidates about the issues and the challenges if they're thinking of putting their hands up.
Yes, we had over 29 participants at our Mildura session last night, and we have, I think, as many today in Murrindini. So, this session is, I guess, our usual face-to-face 3-hour candidate workshop truncated into a more virtually acceptable timeline or time frame of an hour and a half, and is around informing the community about the role of local government, the role of a councillor, and also positioning those members of the community who might be thinking about running in the elections to give them an idea of what they should be thinking about at this stage. A lot of councils throughout Victoria, even in the absence of a decision about the elections, have booked in the VLGA's program. So please, if you're keen to get that out to your community, let us know straight away. And I must remind everyone that the Local Women Leading Change program is now also a virtual resource with some supporting workshops that are happening behind that. So look at our website to get some more information about that.
I think have engaged the VLGA to present those workshops in the coming weeks, and I would think it's a really good thing to be doing from a governance perspective about building awareness and I guess creating that environment where candidates are as fully prepared and informed as possible if they're thinking about running.
Yes, I don't think anyone would argue that we do want candidates running in local government elections who are fully aware of what the role of local government is and also what their obligations are. And in fact, I had a conversation on ABC Mildura radio the other day just about that very fact. And, you know, sometimes that misunderstanding of candidates who might be running on a single policy issue and how when they actually get into the council chamber, of course, they need to be taking into account the information that is presented to them by the officers, but also all of the stakeholders in the community.
All right, a quick look back and look forward in terms of VLGA Connect. We've had some interesting conversations this week. It kicked off with John Watson talking about audit committee considerations for councils, which has been very well viewed, can I put it that way, this week?
There's been a lot of positive feedback. I think, you know, that nuts and bolts of what councils need to be looking at from a risk perspective during this pandemic situation is always of interest and meaningful. We also had, I thought, a terrific conversation yesterday with the state, with the CEO of the State Library and also the CEO of Public Libraries Victoria. And what I really enjoyed about that conversation was not only learning about how agile and responsive our libraries are during this time, but also the potential for them to continue to support more vulnerable members of our community as we slowly exit a COVID-19, you know, full restriction environment. I was also really impressed about the conversation we had where decisions that may have previously taken 12 months to come to have been able to be made in much shorter timeframes. And I think that warrants another conversation about innovation in times of disaster and how, you know, maybe some of those more bureaucratic and longer processes we've had in place before could actually be thrown out the window and we can do things a little bit more quickly.
Exactly right, and there's a theme of that nature that's been flowing through a lot of the conversations that we've been having these past couple of months. Kathryn, you haven't seen it yet. I've recorded an interview today with Stan Crappan, who's one of the co-chairs of Victoria's Building Recovery Task Force, which is providing some terrific insights into the government's thinking around how to present stimulus shovel-ready projects and I guess streamline the process so that they can happen quickly. So I recommend that one to you. And then next week we have another terrific lineup of speakers, most of whom are agreeing because of your approaches, I must say. You're calling on your relationships in the sector to good effect.
Yes, look, I'm very pleased that the relationships that the VLGA has, and certainly in my role of CEO, means that we're able to engage, you know, significant stakeholders in these programs. The feedback I'm getting, as you know, Chris, about the VLGA program is that it is an excellent product, if we want to use that word, and many you know, CEOs, councillors and other agencies are watching to get an update from these highly respected leaders. We have the Victorian Auditor General coming up on Monday, I believe. We also have the CEO of IBAC joining us, perhaps in a few weeks' time. But also I'd like to bring people's attention to the live panel discussion we're having on Monday, I think, which is around engagement, data governance, innovation in the smart city. And we have Tim from the University of Melbourne joining us to lead that conversation. And I would encourage people to register, because it will be, certainly from my experience with watching Tim's work previously, a very engaging and informative session.
Tim Kariotis, a research fellow from the Melbourne School of Government, a terrific presenter, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation about, you can have these disruptive ideas that the technology makes possible. What's the trade-off in terms of privacy and data security, etc., and what's acceptable to the community? That'll be, I think, a key part of the conversation.
It will be, and it's very relevant too with the Local Government Act 2020 and the requirement for community engagement that now sits within that legislation even more so than previously. And councils will need to be considering all sorts of models of engagement, including digital engagement, and some of the opportunities and challenges associated with that.
Register to be part of the live panel on Monday. We're looking forward to hearing people's questions and thoughts on that topic. Kathryn, we're just about out of time now. I just want to say I've had the fortune in my career to be a DJ, and I think you have this unmet ambition to be a DJ, and we've got to basically give up in terms of Song of the Week, because the YouTube copyright algorithm keeps blocking us, which is understandable.
I know. Look, I'm very disappointed about that, Chris. But look, we'll soldier on, and we'll have to find another way of, ending the week on a high note.
I've got another way. Another one. So I think we should do a virtual Song of the Week. So you nominate the song, and then people can go off and just do a search on YouTube or Spotify and have a listen to it for themselves.
Oh, well, look, that's a good idea, but I haven't thought about it this week, so maybe we'll have to start next week.
On notice for next week. Last week it was meant to be Here You Come Again from Dolly Parton.
Oh, look, well, I still would encourage people to have a listen to that if they can.
All right. Thanks, Kathryn. We'll leave it there. Always good to talk. That's it for another newsroom here on VLGA Connect, and we'll see you again this time next week.